It's time for Appraise This with Tim Luke and Greg Strom. The Frick and Frack of Nick and Nack. You can always find them. Treasure Quest Appraisal Group on the web. It's tqag.com. And they're right here on a Tuesday morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, good morning.
Well, so we've got ready for the big weekend. I don't know if this is a big weekend for you guys or not, but this really makes us all feel like summer is here.
Yes.
Well, it's not. It's really the weather's been really ideal down here lately. It's been kind of nice and balmy and breezy and cool,
Low
humidity. So it's good.
Well, my first thing is, and I shake my head because I always had all these toys. I happen to, at 68 be old enough where I did get toys that are now worth money now, but of course I don't have them anyway. But
Right.
there was an auction in Denver that brought in over $5.4 million, antique and vintage from American Amusements. Everything from railroad memorabilia to, once again, what we were talking about last week, coin op machines, automotive sign. Automotive signs are it's amazing what people will pay for.
Yeah, amusement auctions are really they're first of all they're really fun, and depending on what it is, because that's kind of a large category. I mean, it could be um, Nickelodeons, or it could be Tim. What do they call those things? Not fascinators, but it's like a slot machine. But they call them something else. I forget. But they have musical things, music boxes. Do you remember the things you would put a nickel in, and you would look in it, and you'd see racy photographs, and I mean, all of those things are really fun. The auctions are really fun, and they usually do pretty well. I haven't seen how this one did, but in San Francisco, there's right along the wharf, there is and I think it's free of charge. You walk in, and it's an entire warehouse along the bay there, and it's all of these still workable amusements. That some of them are extremely rare, and it's very popular. So the auctions for these, I think, have built up over the years um, to become like a major, like they're major auctions, and the collectors for these are out there, and the first question that comes to mind is, well, where do you store all this stuff? But I mean, 'cause if you've ever seen one, I mean, it takes an entire warehouse.
Well,
So
Craig, in this sale, there was an extremely rare Esmeralda. It's a 5-cent fortune teller uh, game or machine, and it was it had an estimate of $20,000 to $35,000, and it sold for 78,000. So this sale had over 3,500 lots, and it was actually Morphy's is the auction house, and it's in Denver, Pennsylvania, is where the auction took place. And it had railroad memorabilia, so they had almost 1,000 lots of railroad memorabilia with lights and signs, and so it was a lot of advertising as well. But then a lot of these machines that and this was we saw one of these machines, Greg, at the museum that you're talking about in San Francisco. It's a Wurlitzer style military band organ with a full complement of keys, drums, horns, and pipes. And that sold above the estimate. So it sold at 21,600, which was a lot of fun. And they also had this is fun. We had watched. There's something on Netflix, and it's about money explained. There's 5 different 20-minute episodes on money and the different, like get rich quick schemes and different things. But one of them was gambling, is what they talked about. And in this auction, there was it's called the Westerner, and it is a cowboy slot machine. And he's got a gun, and you pull down, and so that sold for $18,000, and that's a full size, which was 4 times the high estimate. So it looks overall that this sale did really, really well.
When I was growing up, my grandmother, to get us to come in as kids, because we lived on a 600-acre farm, okay, and we'd go out and we'd play, and she would holler for us in the evening. And she made up a character that we didn't know was made up at the time, called Granny Creeps. And she said if you were out when it got past dusk, Granny Creeps could get you. And that stuck with me my whole life. And the reason I bring Granny Creeps up is because when I was a little older, I heard the name Grandma Moses. Okay, and I always took that as a fake name. Well, of course, as I got older, I learned Grandma Moses was a pretty famous painter,
Yes.
and one of her paintings is going on auction June 8th and 9th. It's been in private ownership for 40 years, and it's a painting about a snow scene. But Grandma Moses, that's one of those. Is Grandma Moses, does her paintings carry the weight of some of the other significant names you hear, or is it more of an American thing?
Yeah, she would be considered, I guess, Americana, and her things are folk. It's actually folk art, but her things don't come up all that often. But when they do sell well, but not like, let's just, like a Calder or a Picasso or anything. But she does sell well, and they're kind of hard to find. They're not, they don't come up all that often. So it'll be. Is this coming up, or did it sell already?
It's coming up at the first week of June.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I'll have to see, because I love Americana, and I like the especially some of the art that we had a client, may she rest in peace, who did collect early American artists, and there were some really. It's not a taste that everybody enjoys, because some of them look pretty primitive, but they're really they really do well. The early American stuff really does. There's a pretty good sized market for it, and I'll have to follow that and see, because
Yeah. Well, she was a Virginia-born painter, and her name was Anna Mary Robertson Moses, and of course known by her nickname Grandma Moses. But and her artwork, it's characteristics of folk art, realism, nostalgia, but she rejected the label of American primitive, and because she found it derogatory. Is that she was just painting. She did her thing, and this was what she loved to do. And but it's interesting because her work does lie outside the mainstream of modern painting. It's very characteristic if you've seen one. And actually, I was doing an appraisal just a couple of about three weeks ago, and I stumbled across one in this estate. They had no idea this piece was there. So they're things that people have purchased and probably picked up years ago, and then they're starting to come out, and they do sell. They do sell well too.
Now, would Grandma Moses be considered in the same vein as what's the guy that does all those Americana paintings? Norman Rockwell.
Oh, that's
different.
Yeah, that's different. But that's actually a kind of a good comparison, because they're both Americans. They're both they're both popular. I don't think she was as prolific though as Norman Rockwell, but she did one kind of painting, and that was it. Norman Rockwell, on the other hand, he considered himself to be an artist, not an illustrator, but
Right.
he somehow never really got away from that.
Well, that was the Saturday Evening Post. He was capturing
Yeah.
the ideal of American life.
Because Grandma Moses, Norman Rockwell was far more known, really, than Grandma Moses. Because if you, like you say, you probably heard of Norman Rockwell before you heard of Grandma Moses and knew who he was. So she was, she was a great American painter. I mean, for a period of time, for a type of painting, but I don't think she's ever really reached the popularity of Norman Rockwell.
Well, also when she was painting Grandma Moses, she really people found her artwork later in her life. So she was 79 and she lived to be 101, and she died in 1961. So I mean, she did work, but as Greg said, it was not as prolific as a Norman Rockwell. And I think the things that he did, and because of the Saturday Evening Post, that really rocketed him to a whole other level of notoriety.
All right, and in the last few minutes, Heritage Auctions today starts a automobilia transport history and mechanical model auction. That's a whole lot of words.
That's a whole lot.
They have been doing really bang up auction. I mean, they've really been kicking some butt with auctions. This past month has been a really, really good month for them. They've had some really fantastic auctions. So I mean, they really have built their market, and it's over a long period of time, and they've really become a force to be reckoned with in the auction world for most of the genres that are out there now. So it's going to be an interesting sale. I'm going to see if I can follow that a little bit today, because they're fun to watch. And just on one final note here, you were talking about your grandmother, and she created this character.
Yep.
In the sale for the mechanical music things and all of the amusements, there was a piece called Grandma's Prophecies. It was a fortune teller, and she looks pretty scary. So it could be your grandmother. You might want to check it out.
Granny creeps. It got us back in the house for dinner. All right, guys. We'll speak to you next week.
Okay, have a great week.
Have a good week.
Take care. Tim Luke and Greg Schramm, the appraisal guys, the frickin' frack of Nick and Knack with Appraise This here on Robin Hood Radio.